I love the fact that we coordinated your blue backdrop with mine matching blue.
That's right. And the raven in the background's actually named Dolly, which is news
I
to you,
know.
but it makes sense to everybody else.
Yeah. These aren't these aren't coincidences.
Mm-mm.
These synchronicities, they are abundant and everywhere.
Hello, Jill.
Good evening, Tobe.
We are live yet again. We've got a lot to talk about here, so shall we not waste any time? Unless you have anything that you want to lead off with here.
I can't believe it's Friday. I mean, this week has flown by. The last 2 weeks
Hmm.
have been a blur. There has been a lot of stuff going on. So much stuff. I feel like a real grown up. You know how I feel? It's in Don't Tell. Remember that movie? Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's
Oh
Dead.
my
And
gosh,
Christina
yes.
Applegate is like, I have to go be a fashion designer and take care of everything. Um,
Oh, that's
I
right.
feel
Yeah.
like I'm having to pretend to be a grown up because there's like so much stuff going on.
I
But I made
forgot
it.
she was in that one. I always get that one mixed up with the other one where the guy, one of the Coreys goes out on a date and it's like an overwhelming date he's on. I don't know. I get them mixed up.
Dream a little dream.
No, like
No,
License to Drive, I think.
that's right.
Yeah,
Okay.
License. I can always picture the VHS box in my head, but I can't picture much else.
Okay. Well, there will be a quiz next week on the Corey
Which
movies. So
Coreys?
yeah. So get up to speed. So yes, it has been a whirlwind of
Mhm.
activity at Flash of Beauty headquarters. Da da da
Yeah.
da. So let's just get into it.
Okay. I'll lead off here. Gosh. Well, so we need to talk about what's happening on Henry's bomb dropping two-part series here. We want to talk about Jeff Rohn. We want to talk about how the documentary is also available, but Henry's bomb drop. I'm looking at it here on YouTube, and initially the idea was to maybe give a little bit of space, and you tell me if I'm wrong, Brett or Jill here, but drop a bomb with Henry's confession, his major disclosure, and then maybe give it a little air and let people ruminate about it. But we went double bomb droppings back to back,
We
and
did.
it was a lot. And just total transparency, I didn't see the video first, so for me, it was all new information. And you guys had been sitting on this for how long?
Um, a few weeks maybe.
Yeah, but
I
not months, not years or anything like that.
No, but I do want
Yeah.
to say back in 2020 when we originally sat down with Henry,
Hmm.
after we wrapped his interview, he paused and said, "There's other things I want to share, but I
Hmm.
can't." And I was
Hmm.
like, "Well, that great, that does me a lot of good." So we parted ways, and then he reached out and he's like, "Okay, I got the green light. I can talk." And so we didn't really know what to expect. I mean, I suppose had he had permission to speak back then, he probably would have been more vocal about everything that was voiced in our videos,
Right.
and we would have just put it out all at once, in the way that we have been, everything that hasn't made the cut of the documentaries.
Hmm.
So, and what's also interesting is there was a little bit of a debate because I I thought that we should just put one video out and just put it all out there, let everyone just take it all in, and then sit quietly with it
Right.
and reflect. And Brett was like, "This is a lot to digest, so let's." Just like a Flash of Beauty, Bigfoot revealed, and a Flash of
Hmm.
Beauty, paranormal Bigfoot. Let's split
Hmm.
it down the middle so people can catch their breath.
Hmm.
But because there's like, I think dropping Henry's interview, people got rattled and were like, you know what? while it's still fresh, we need
Mm.
to hit them with part two. So, and what's so interesting,
They struggled, Jill. The men of the Bigfoot community struggled. Oh my gosh, they still are struggling. There might be calls into Michael Adams for therapy sessions. There was some major struggling going on. And Henry gave us a teeny little glimmer into what was going to come your way in Longview. He stopped us in the conference. He showed up at the Longview Squatch Fest and pretty much just said, "Hey, I've been allowed to talk, um, and I want to go forward with what I really know." Some 22 years later, right? Because for those that don't know, that haven't seen this video, that are just watching this live, back in 2000, around approximately, Henry was basically sworn to secrecy based upon secondhand knowledge. Now, this is what Henry pretty much says throughout the interview. This is secondhand knowledge, that there are these clandestine programs behind, and not behind walls, pretty much underground, between Sasquatch and the DoD, and they work hand in furry hand with the humans, working on uh, basically nuclear secrets. And this all came about through a pinball repairman. Now, this is where our story basically starts. Is that Henry, within the first 30 minutes of this interview, takes you to this world where a pinball repairman, leading a double life. And I know, and Henry, by the way, as he's explaining this story, he's like, "I know this sounds like an incredible story. It's an incredible story. Just stick with me here." And he takes you into this world where this man, Henry in this case, lives with this secret that he believes. And I think there's more to this story behind just what this guy is telling him, right, Jill?
yeah,
Okay. And we don't really go there in part one. We go there a little bit more in part two with the science of where Henry's at with it, because Henry's whole thing is that he wants to basically have a scientific revolution on the behest of not only free energy, but basically validating that there are two types of physics, and that Henry knows this. There's the secret physics that they have, and then there's the public physics that we all know about. And there's a kind of in the UFO world, they call this a breakaway civilization, where there's a civilization that has been living in the Buck Rogers time, and then there's us, basically just wrapping our head around the beginnings of nanotechnology and the metaverse and whatever. But these guys are already in anti-gravity. They're already utilizing cold fusion. um, so Henry's going to these places and pretty much saying Sasquatch is the hillbilly scientists. This is the lovely term that only the mind of Franzoni can come up with. That the hillbilly scientists have come to us and are the brains of the operation, and we are kind of like the worker dwarves. We're mining away on the behest of the brilliance of them. Now, I got a lot more to say about all this, Jill, but you go ahead.
so where does one begin? Yeah, it was a lot. And on a side note, Henry did send us a presentation that, like a whiteboard
Mm.
presentation he did, where he gets into all the Einstein stuff that he mentioned, and it was over my head. So,
It's over my head too. I mean, a lot of it. It's on henryfranzoni.com. If you want to see it, I put a link in the comments under some of his videos. There's a link on Facebook to it. I think it's just henryfranzoni.com. And he does like an hour and a half presentation on this hidden science versus this public science, which is
mhm.
fascinating. Like, right? Like, I mean, if you like Michio Kaku, if you like the mind that can bring science in an entertaining, fun, and affable kind of way, Henry is trying to bring that to you. And so for everybody who gets really irritated by the claims, they weren't nearly as irritated with the science, from what I could tell in part two. Is that where you're at, Jill?
So this is interesting. Like we got a reaction. We kind of kicked the hornet's nest with part one. Part two, and I don't know if maybe we weeded some people out, and maybe part two kind of brought more like-minded people to the party.
Yeah.
But there's some really interesting comments in there, and it seemed like after the shock of part one wore off, people were more open to part two. This is where it gets interesting. So, in spite of like all the comments that are going on the videos, I start getting private messages from people that I don't
Me.
know, people like who saw the YouTube, or like via YouTube, via our website, via just
Hmm.
Messenger from Facebook. And there's a lot of people who have similar stories and claims as Henry's. Where do you sort that? I mean, what do you do with that? It's a lot. I'm like, okay, okay.
Now, I did
So
not get those kind of. I got instant messages from people that were fit to be tied over the claims, and they had a real sense of bitterness and vitriol about the very idea that Sasquatch could be working with the Navy, basically, right? The Department of Defense and the Navy in particular. Um, Here's the deal: is that we live in such a crazy time right now, where claims like Henry's making. I mean, this is what I mean. I just downloaded a comment not too long ago from Lou Elizondo that basically said we need to get ready for a due date for the arrival of an alien space race, and that may be sometime in 2026. That was confirmed through a source you sent my way and Rich's way last week. Uh, and you that guy's no nonsense, right? Like from what you guys told me,
he's the real
Lou,
deal. Yeah.
Lou Elizondo, I don't think is who he claims to be. He's not just some guy that's breaking ranks. He's been sent on a mission. So has Henry been sent on a mission, right? Because there's something, one of the concerns I have, and people that were messaging me, is that perhaps there was a Bob Lazar element to this, where Henry has been kind of perhaps sent a bill of goods disinformation wise, and he doesn't know it. Like they're placing an incredible story on someone who will tell an incredible story that is muddled with fact and fiction.
Here's a thought. Can I jump in really quick?
Yeah.
Make a note of, 2020, February of 2024, with what Henry had to say, and just kind of file it away, as Arlo Williams would say from A Flash of Beauty documentaries. uh, just file it away, because think about like 20 years ago or so, when there were some pretty insane claims going on about UFOs, aliens,
Mhm.
UAPs, and
Right.
now we're talking about it. So
Hmm.
it's kind of normalized, and we're desensitized. So just give it some time. Let's see what else comes out.
Yeah. I have all sorts of notes here written about Henry's confession, right? Because I didn't feel as though this was a disinfo campaign from Henry. I felt like this was a passionate confession, and it all comes to a head in part two with the last sentence he says, where he's been waiting 22 years to get this off his chest. And you get that feeling from the guy throughout this interview. It doesn't really, it's not really an interview as much as, and none of these really feel like they're interviews. They feel like conversations, by the way. And Henry is sincere. He says words like, I know this is an outrageous story. I know how outrageous it is. He admits that it's secondhand, a great portion of what he's saying. He doesn't talk about this other percentage that he doesn't know about. In fact, he says he didn't even believe the story for 22 years. He basically filed it away into something that he didn't really know if it was true, because he says he doesn't believe in anything. Either, and I wrote it down there, he either knows, he doesn't know, or he thinks. And there was just those three levels, those three categories to put this incredible story. Um, but then in part two, Jill, he gets into some interesting stuff that we can just tangentially touch on this. Um, Part two, Henry gets into where Sasquatch lives. And, I've had a chance to talk to Henry about communicating with Sasquatch and maybe what they are. But where does Sasquatch live? And according to Henry, Jill?
He made a reference, I believe the prompt for that part of the interview or
Mm,
conversation, Brett asked him for his take on Mount St. Helens eruption back in
mhm,
1980, because there were reports that there were bodies recovered. And I mean, you'd have to go back and listen to the interview, but he goes back and he discussed that they live in like the lava tubes, and he went into detail about this is all such a blur. I can't remember if he spoke about this on camera or if it was off camera, but like the areas near Mount St. Helens, the lava tubes
mhm.
that they live in. How many report? I mean, you think of the ape caves. I mean, how many reports do we hear from people who have sightings in or around caves? And then there's that whole theory of them
Mm.
living underground in caves. So,
Well, even the painting in Flash of Beauty, right? In the Sistine Chapel.
oh
Um,
yeah,
I mean, that's
creepy.
just like, okay. But then Henry says something I thought was really interesting. He says Sasquatch live underneath magma lakes. That
Yes.
the highest concentration happen to be in Virginia, but if you want to know where Sasquatch are concentrated in your region, then you need to look to stagnant magma lakes, not ones that delineate and grow, but stagnant ones. Well, what are magma lakes? They're kind of lakes of fire, right? I mean, that's in the Old Testament, that's what you would call where monsters live. They live in the lake of fire, right?
Sure.
Um, So I thought that was pretty interesting that Henry was basically saying, "Hey, if you want to find out where the monsters live, look to the Lake of Fire." Well, Henry said other things like that to me as well that um, you know, I have audio clips of. He was out in Cottage Grove and had a conversation around the campfire at the Al Moon Lab with Daryl and I and our buddy Ren, who no one's really met yet, but we'll bring him on one of our videos soon. And Henry and his wife, his first wife, talked about the haunting melody of drum rhythms. Now, drum rhythms go back, of course, way before Native Americans to ancient Africa, and probably way before that to contact the spirit realm by playing drums, the syncopated drum beat. And so I asked Henry in some audio here that I thought about playing for folks, but I'll just give the highlights. Is that there's a song, Bolero. Everybody knows Bo Derek, maybe from the 1980s, the slow motion footage of Bolero with the cornrows when you could wear those. And she was running down the beach, and Bolero is playing in the background with Dust. Or is it Dudley Moore? Right, Dudley Moore is the character. So there's this song Bolero, and it's got this very haunting drum beat. Well, this is the drum beat that Bigfooters have been using to Lowland Sasquatch out here in the Olympic Peninsula with tremendous success. So, what is it about Bolero? Well, according to Henry, Sasquatch loves the number six. Sasquatch loves three sixes together, in particular 666. And that within the song Bolero are those syncopated rhythms of 6 times 18. Now, Henry, being a drummer, would know. All I can tell you is that after Henry brought this up at the Al Moon Lab, we had something come to the Al Moon Lab and drum. It was about 3 days later. It was the distinct sound of creatures coming over to an empty 50-gallon barrel and drumming on it, about 10 feet away from my microphone head.
Ooh.
And then you hear the resounding, organic vocalization of a big something talking, snarling, breathing, percussively making sounds as they're drumming away. Now, I told Henry about this immediately, and Henry's response was classic. And I said, Henry, I think the Bigfoots came and played drums for you, or at least were acknowledged the fact that you were at the property talking about this. And his response was, well, I'm not surprised. That was it. That's what he said. And, I played this audio for other people, primatologists, I played this audio for. Um, and they are aghast at the audio that was captured then based upon, and I totally give, I guess I don't blame Henry, I give him credit for coming to the property and talking about this. But had he not spoken about drumming, there's no doubt in my mind we would have never got the syncopated rhythm about 10 feet away of a Sasquatch playing bongo drums on a 50-gallon drum outside in the gravel yard. Just incredible. So when Henry tells me that Sasquatch could be mixed up, they could be the brains of the operation, they could be the hillbilly scientists helping the DoD. I'm torn. Can you blame me? I'm torn.
It's a lot to take in. Have Now, is that audio that you have or that Daryl Adams has? Have I heard this
No.
audio?
Yeah. Do you want me to try to play it?
Yeah, if
Okay.
you have it, and I also just really quick in the chat, someone was asking about that from Paranormal Bigfoot, the artwork. I believe it was the Last Judgment.
Oh, gotcha.
Well,
Oh,
what it was, and right at the foot of the cross, underneath the crucifixion, in a cave, are two.
let me see if this
Uh,
will play here. Now, this is
yeah.
Henry talking, and then tell me if you can hear this because I've got my Bluetooth on. I'm just going to play it from my computer speaker. Initiate Sasquatch activity. So, can you what hear is that? That rhythm?
Six. They like six. I don't know why. They like six phrased as 18. Um, like three sixes in a row. They like three sixes. I don't know why. I have no clue why. Or no theory. I've just spent a lot of time being a drummer trying to identify what rhythmic imagination Sasquatch had. That's like one of the questions I want to know about Sasquatch is what is their rhythmic conception? The out there for you guys.
So to, okay, so yeah, and let me pause that there. So, does that coming in loud and clear?
Yeah.
Okay. So 3 days later, in the exact same spot that we're having this conversation, is a 50-gallon barrel that once in a while we get gifts on. It's sitting in the gravel yard. We shot film there. It wasn't too far from where we shot film with Sonia. There's an empty 50-gallon barrel. My recorder's inside, right up against the metal wall. And here's the sound we got around 11:30 at night. Okay, so I don't know if that came through or not. Did it come through?
It did. I heard it.
Okay. Had you ever heard that before?
I don't know. I'll be honest. Daryl hits me up on a regular basis. Like, did I ever play this clip for
Oh,
you? He's always sending me stuff. So
right, right. Yeah.
if I
Well,
did hear it, I apologize. I forgot.
yeah, no, that's no problem. I just think it goes to show a larger point that was absolutely not. I mean, there's no BS there. We didn't make that sound. I can't. Henry would have had to drop in like Tom Cruise from a helicopter and like hang out over there and beat the drums and then zip back up because it was all gravel and there was no approach. So it was one of the more astounding things that ever happened on that property, and I blame Henry for it.
Well, accept it for what it is. It was a
Hmm.
gift.
No.
And I'm sure Henry has a lot more to say because, when we wrapped up this conversation, you could see he was getting like his memory jarred. He's like, oh, there was that one. He's like, we'll save that. We'll save that. So we're going to let everyone absorb and just kind of recover and
Mhm.
digest what Henry's had to say before we revisit Fun with Franzoni.
But what's great about this, just in the final closing, is that if it's utter nonsense, it to me it almost doesn't matter, for the fact that it's so well done that it breaks the matrix. It's just if it's an orchestrated demolition, I think it has legs, right? Like we can find out whether or not this guy exists that talked to Henry to some degree. There are places we can go, things we can do, things that are kind of in the works, and we just can't allow the establishment to feed us what narratives they want. And Henry is fit to be tied with the establishment.
So we'll just have to keep everyone posted on developments, and we'll see what happens.
Okay.
But
All
it
right.
was fun. I just want to say, regardless if you were triggered or if you were just enthralled with what Henry had to say, he is a great person to sit down and talk to. And he's also an extremely talented drummer. He was a big part of the Portland music scene
Hmm.
back in the, gosh, I guess that would have been like, what, late 80s, early 90s? Don't
If you
quote me
want
on
to
the
look up
dates.
his work, you can go look it up. One of his more famous albums is called Caveman Shoe Store, and I think you can find it on YouTube. A delightful melody.
There you go.
Okay, Jill, take us into what you want to discuss next.
Okay, moving on. So we figured the perfect person to follow Henry Part 1 and 2 was Jeff Rohn. This was another situation where after A Flash of Beauty Paranormal Bigfoot came out, Jeff reached back to us and said, I didn't share any of my paranormal experiences surrounding Bigfoot, and I need to get it off my chest. I need to sit down and tell you everything. So that's what we did. And he had, I mean, it was not just the Bigfoot, but we got into UFO stuff. One thing that we did not cover, which was, I don't know how, like when you're so excited about something and then you forget about it and you're like, how could I have forgotten? Jeff had mentioned that, when he was younger in childhood, when he was having these alien UFO visitation encounters, abductions. He referenced feeling like he could always like they were always listening to him and stuff. He always felt like there was something in his ear, like they were listening, and it drove him nuts. And he told me that it was a while ago. He had like an ear infection or something. He went to urgent care. And he's like, "Well, while you're in there, can you find that alien implant?" And the
Right.
nurse laughed. She's like, "Well, let's take a look." She's like, there's actually something metallic and shiny down there." And every time she would try to get it, she couldn't
Yeah.
get it. So we have in our toolkit of cameras, we have one of those little scope cameras, like
Oh, yes.
for ears, nose.
Yes.
And I was like, we're gonna get that implant. I am ready. We're gonna do it. And oh man, I had that camera charging. I had it right there next to where we filmed. He actually came up to our house and we filmed him in our little dining nook. And then, we wrapped up, made some small talk, and he left. And after he left, Brett turned to me and said, Jill, we didn't film in his ear. The one thing you've been talking about for like the past 2 weeks. And I was just like, ah. So I don't know if that was by design that I forgot, or I'll just have to like show up at his house with this thing, like, let me see your ear. Um, but yeah, I thought that was interesting. So yeah, Jeff had a lot of interesting things to say, and I loved how it all started when they moved to that house out in the country, and the kids who lived there were like, "Don't go in the woods, you know, beware of that big thing." I mean, how foreboding, and like how many horror films have we seen that play
Hmm.
out in the beginning? So,
You know, I've known Jeff off and on since about 2013 time frame, I think, and so it's going on 10 or 11 years. And we lost contact for a little while, but recently made contact after you got him on film, and I said nice work, and so now we're texting. And he's just one of those guys that the phenomena is attracted to, and so he started having these functions like house parties out near Tum Tum. Yeah, that's where he lived. Really, he lived out by Mount Tum Tum, and it was just. I mean, I remember driving out to his house. It was quite the little jaunt, and he lived right there in the middle of it, and so this is the way this seems to work: is that if you're a magnet, then you're always a magnet for all the other stuff too. It's just like Jeff has one story after another in this video. It's like 45, 50 minutes of stories. That's the way it works. Like if you're a magnet, I'm sorry. It's just like I don't have the luxury of disbelieving the fact that there are magnets out there. This guy seems to be one. And now if he has an implant, probably literally a magnet, right? And oh, by the way, those things seem to move. Like if you go after them, they seem to hightail it to different areas of the body. There's strange properties with them. One of the things I think you can do is put a stud finder, right? Like if you have an EMF detector or even like a stud finder from Lowe's, I think
ooh,
you can get a little signal or ping once in a while off that. Maybe, I don't know, if you stuck a magnet, maybe you'd see some skin pull up off. That's a little bit intrusive.
like
Sorry,
an
Jeff.
Acme, like
Well,
Roadrunner, Coyote and Roadrunner type.
right, right, yeah, right. And it just says, like Zorp on the side or wherever it was manufactured. But um, yeah, no, I can't wait to meet up with the guy again. And I had no idea the length and the breadth of encounters the guy had. And then the final thing that he mentions is his mother, right? And that he's been kind of teased by the family at family gatherings, and I kind of know what that's like. It kind of sucks once in a while, but then he figures out like mom is also a contactee because she had missed it. Oh, that's like the one time I had those two little guys stand at the foot of my bed, and you know, man, oh man, holding back on those hidden events kind of stinks, once in a while.
Yep, it happens. It
Yeah, it
happens.
does. Okay. As far as the rest of Jeff Roan's video, it's totally worth watching and sharing just for the fact that there's so much overlap between the phenomenas, and you get a real taste of it, and again, you get someone who's kind of confessing on camera the fact that they're a perpetual witness, and he was on a spaceship. I don't know if maybe he's told me that once, but that's a pretty incredible detail to say that you were him and his brother, like Flight of the Navigator style,
Hmm.
shot off through Portland into
Up
deep
by
outer
five.
space. Yeah.
Up by five. But I've talked, Tobe, last year when we were at the UFO Fest in McMinnville, some woman came up and she's like, "Oh, Bigfoot." Okay, so for those of you who aren't familiar, McMinnville, Oregon, has an amazing UFO fest, parade, everything. Uh, we shared a booth there where
Hmm.
Tobe was selling his wood watchers, and I was selling Flash of Beauty merchandise. This woman comes up, she's like, "Oh, Bigfoot, interesting." She's like, I-5 is a like an expressway for all the UFOs, and And I guess it's like how for some people when they first hear all the Bigfoot stories and encounters and it's
Right.
overwhelming, that's what was going on. She was overwhelming me with all her UFO knowledge and experience. So,
You know, I-5 does seem to be a corridor from. I've heard so many stories that are validating what Jeff Roan's saying, and I just got so much information that I've kind of forgotten about. But all the way down to Eugene, Oregon, I-5 north to Portland, probably all the way to Canada and beyond, even into California down to the Baja. I've heard incredible stories on I-5 of spaceships being seen at low altitude. I'm talking less than 500 feet off of I-5, giant triangles, incredible details behind these encounters. My son got a photo with his mom on I-5 of a craft. So yeah, it does. If I don't know, maybe they're trying to show off. Maybe it's a psyop, and they. I don't know. There's a lot of different ways you can go with what's really going on with these stories of people that are being abducted. I don't know if everybody's being abducted and they're all legitimate abductions, or they're orchestrated psyops by deep state players that are trying to spin a narrative. It kind of has to be one or the other, though, just given the implants, right? Because those are real. I mean, they're not all BBs. They're not all pieces of, your Aunt Milda's Tupperware, that you accidentally swallowed. They're they're real things. They have signals on them. They've done microscopic analysis on these implants, and it mostly has to do with the layering of these objects, the mechanics of how they're built. Tell the story that they can't be built here on Earth. So to be continued with you, Mr. Roan. To be continued.
so moving on, one of the other things, because we like to keep things interesting, we went ahead and made a Flash of Beauty Bigfoot revealed on our channel.
It's kind of a big deal.
And I just want to address because a lot of people are like, it's in 360p. Why, you guys need better cameras. Well, boy, we had to jump through some hoops to get the 4K up and running. But if you have already watched it, thank you. Go back and take a look at it like it's supposed to look. I mean, there's no reason we go out and film all these beautiful interviews and then put together a movie that was really low quality. So the 4K is up there. And what's been really cool is it's been really hard for people in Canada to see the movie. And now we're getting contacted by all these people in Canada who now have access to it.
Oh,
So that's
nice.
been fun. Yeah, yeah. We just want to, share and get the word out. And also because now that we've shared, we were finding that so many people were coming to our YouTube page who didn't even know about the documentaries.
From Canada?
No,
Oh,
from everywhere. Like
okay.
everyone's like, these are, or like people would ask about the interviews, like, why don't you show the pictures or blah blah blah. I'm like, well, these are the full interviews. And finally, Brett said, you know what? People need to see the documentary. Like most of the people coming here have no idea what we're talking about. They think these are the documentaries. The interviews that we posted are the documentaries we're talking about. So it's been really fun sharing that, especially people who have never seen it, getting their reactions. I think my favorite was someone said, "This is just a summary of the interviews." I was like, "No, you're doing it wrong. You're supposed to watch the documentary first, then watch all the interviews for context." But yeah, I guess it is a summary, an abbreviated summary of everything. Um, let's see here. What else to say about that? Yeah, so I don't know how long that's going to be up there. Um, we'll see. If people stop watching it, we'll take it down. If people seem to be enjoying it, we will leave it up.
Jill, what does it take? Does it take the followers to get this on Netflix? What does it take to get a Flash of Beauty on Netflix?
On
What do we need
Netflix.
to?
Um, so we've had between Brett and I have had two other programs, projects, films on YouTube. It's been a while. The last one was back in like 2012, a
Hmm.
movie called Light of Mine. If you're into national parks and like Yellowstone, I recommend you check out this little indie art house film we did, Light of Mine. And the other one before that was back when Netflix actually sent out DVDs, and you would get
Okay.
your DVD, watch it, send it
I
back. So
remember that. Yeah.
it's changed a lot. We had been in contact with Netflix about some stuff. The programming mandates of what they're looking for and whatnot changes like seasonally, but
Hmm.
we weren't quite in the right place at the right time.
Hmm.
I don't know. I guess with enough sheer will and
Hmm.
emails, I don't know. Start emailing
Okay.
Netflix, I
Is there?
guess.
Yeah, I didn't know if that was what they looked at. How the process works, if it's political or whatnot. It just seems like such a strong film that it should already be on there. So I just kind of like, well, maybe we should double check with the higher ups and see what it takes, because I just think more eyeballs on part one and part two is, for the betterment of a possibility of part three. We don't need to get into part three, but if there were ever a part three, part one and two are definitely leading the way.
We will have that conversation later about part
Okay.
three.
Oh.
Um, there's always something in the works. But yeah, I mean, it's funny because we're always surprised. We always think that we've reached this saturation level, like, oh, everyone's seen the movie, everyone knows about it. And then we'll hear from people who've like, I just discovered your channel, I just learned about your
Mhm.
documentary. And we're like, gosh, we really have a lot of work to do. And it is a grassroots marketing. It's basically us posting on Facebook, us
Right.
doing stuff like this, emailing, texting people, doing events. But yeah, we can always circle back, and I'll put out some feelers, see what we can do.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Because there's some other people on Netflix that we're, in the same space of, that are already up there, and so things to come on that. I'm gonna write a note here. Make sure to call Netflix and send in a grievance letter.
Mr. Netflix, I have a
Yeah,
grievance.
Daddy Netflix. Hello, Daddy Netflix.
Oh, but hey, our next, so it is Friday. So tomorrow, Saturday, we have another interview dropping. And we figured with all this Henry Franzoni and Jeff Rohn, um, extraordinary stuff, we need to bring it back home and really ground and give some people something secure that they can hold on to. And so we have a special, I guess you called the part two a follow up, from A Flash of Beauty, Bigfoot Revealed, featuring Todd Neese. So that was,
Perfect.
we filmed up at Mount Hood, not too far from his house, and yeah, just a little something to keep the flesh and blood folks from going off the rails.
Now, is Todd Nace fully sold on the flesh and blood still? Because I sense um, that there may be a change in Todd's world. I mean, is his wife? He got married, right? Remarried. Is his
Yeah.
wife in the flesh and blood camp? Is she interested in this? Do we know?
She has so Angela has she shared some experiences like between her and her family that they've had
Mhm.
back in Arkansas. I don't know the stories well enough, or I don't know if I really have permission to share. But yeah,
Mhm.
she's really interested in the topic. I'll tell you what. When we first met Todd back at Beachfoot, um,
Yeah.
flesh and blood all the way. He's all about protection of the species, working with the tribes to have them protected. What's interesting is there's been a bit of a shift, and of all the people that I know, like in this circle, in our this arena, Todd has been the biggest supporter of our sequel, Flash of Beauty Paranormal Bigfoot. He actually at one point he pulled me aside and said, "Your first film is good. This is great. You've outdone yourself." He's like, "This is the movie people need to see." Um, he even arranged a screening of it at Cabela's. Now, I thought that was going to be kind of like swimming with sharks because I expected
Right.
a lot of hunters to come in and be like, "Ugh, what's all this woo stuff?" But I'll tell you what, there was when we were getting set up, there was a guy kind of checking out the setup from the doorway, and he looks like he had just rolled in from the woods, and he was buying a bunch of like supplies and whatnot. And he's like, "What's this all about?" And I was like, "Well, we made a documentary, but people were reporting like I was handling them with kid gloves because I was
Yeah.
not ready to be raked over the coals. I have a pretty tough skin, but I was not. I just wanted to get through the screening." And he's like, "Oh yeah, oh yeah," and he's like, "I've seen the lights, I've seen the tracks disappear and what."
Oh,
And I was just
nice.
like, "Oh." And I was like, "Well, stick around and watch the movie." He's like, "Well, I got to go like check my coyote traps or something like
Mm.
that." And I was like, "Okay." So, I mean, so yeah, anyways, I kind of got off topic there, but Todd has been a huge supporter and has really been pushing this film. So, I don't know. I haven't really
Well,
had a chance to sit down with him and do a follow up to see, what's changed or why he feels this one is the one that everyone needs to know about.
um, I think it's just that consensus reality is changing, and Todd is a part of that. It's going to catch up with these other guys eventually and ladies. And so I'm glad he's ahead of the curve here. Um, both films are fantastic, but part two is supreme, just for the sheer awe factor of so many parts of the beginning, the middle, and especially the end. But as far as cinema, that first 10 minutes, I always tell people, prepare yourself. And people have a chance to see this on the big screen coming up at the beginning of March in Medellin Falls, which I've never seen any of our stuff really on big screen the way it's supposed to be seen. Like at Forks, we put it up on the big screen, but not in true fashion. We had some hiccups there, and the films weren't totally complete. Medellin Falls is going to be like the real deal, right?
April 6th, Medellin Falls at the Cutter Theater. It's a beautiful, beautiful historic theater.
Hmm.
They put on a great dinner and everything. It's a party. It's great. So if you happen to be in extreme Northeast Washington, come by and see us. We also, but before that, not this upcoming Friday, but the following Friday on the 22nd, we are screening at the Oregon Ghost Conference in Seaside, Oregon,
Okay.
at the Times Theater, which has recently reopened. It's like a kind of like a McMiniman style, pub theater thing. But
Nice.
the last time I was at the Times Theater, I think I was like in seventh grade or eighth grade. So it'll be interesting to see what they've done. Trying to think, there's more. We also, end of April, we can start talking about this. We will be at the Nebraska Bigfoot Festival.
Oh, you're going all the way to Nebraska.
We're going to Nebraska. We're taking the show on the road.
My, oh my. That's awesome.
And then
Okay.
and then of course this summer. Now, I don't want to get too far out, but like, we have uh Sasquatch Summerfest going on in July. I know there's some other things coming together. We're even, oh, yes, in June, and we haven't even talked about this, Tobe. Make sure your passport is valid because we have an international screening just across the border.
Oh, in
More
Vancouver?
in the BC, more details coming on that. as
Okay.
but there's some fun things in the works, so
Okay.
we're really excited. Just in closing, before we move on to your news and the items you need to go over, folks, if you are visiting our website, if you're watching our videos, please subscribe, please, share the good word, let people know about what we're trying to do. We're just trying to get the word out there and just trying to share all these incredible stories.
Okay. Well, we put this off long enough, Jill. And it's not just news I have, it's news that we all have. Um, I thought about offering up a conference for people. You know, I've done them before. That's how I started. Often this community is putting on conferences in Eugene, Oregon. I put on 2.5 conferences and then started doing little ones, and they turn into monthlies and they turn into podcasts, and then it snowballed into documentaries. But since I'm up here in Bigfoot habitat in the Olympic Peninsula, it just seemed a little bit too claustrophobic to throw everybody in said casino or Grange, whatever. So, as of 5 minutes ago, tickets are now on sale for the first annual Olympic, I'm back in Oregon, sorry, Olympic Strange Days. So if you go to www.olympicstrangedays.com, there are tickets on sale now for 30 people. And those 30 people will have a chance to join the cast and crew of A Flash of Beauty in the woods the way it should be. Okay. So the way this will work is that if you buy a ticket, which advanced tickets go on sale, as I said, now, and they hold all the way till July 4th, and the ticket prices will go up. Um, you can read all about it on our website at olympicstrangedays.com. It's also on the Facebook page. But we will arrive in the woods on a Thursday morning, and we will break camp on a Sunday. And we're going to keep our numbers small and kind of confined right now. There's a general idea of where you're going and our meetup location. But the idea is to put people in the field with people that know something about the field. We really can't do a conference like this without Barb Shoop, because I didn't get this idea out of my own head. Barb Shoop has been doing this for the last, I think, 10 years. And she does it out in Greenwater, and she puts 20 to 30 people together for 4 or 5 days, and they have tremendous experiences. Now, hers is kind of free form. And when she does it, pretty much have a morning and an evening round table around the campfire, which she hosts. And she kind of passes a camera around or a microphone to people, and they sit around and they have a good time and talk about what happened during the day. Now, Barb's still going to take that mantle, and she's going to be kind of our campfire wizardess. And so, but we're going to have some field guides that are going to have these field experiences at camp. Included in that is Dr. Simeon Hine of Dark Matter Monsters, who's nice enough to come to town and teach remote viewing and give a didactic on-site lesson in the woods about where remote viewing came from, the science behind remote viewing, and then kind of take you down the rabbit hole, getting into the quanta world and understanding dark matter as it relates to his book, Dark Matter Monsters. But we're going in deep with remote viewing. So if you don't know anything about the CI's relationship to remote viewing, our plan is to utilize remote viewing on location specific areas so you can interact with the paranormal. That's what we're doing here, folks. We're not just going in the woods here to sit at camp and have some lessons. We're going there to have an experience, right? Like a la, I'm going to say Greer CE5 kind of stuff, but there's no protocols here. We're going in there because we know we're going into a hot spot. That's already been confirmed. Also in tow is Rich Germeau, who's going to break out his detective skills, teach us about looking into tracking, casting, forensics, and talking to you about the specific area where the Melba Ketchum study was done, some 5 miles away in the hills. We'll have a close up encounter of where the Melba Ketchum Olympic project stuff was collected. Beyond that, myself, I'll be there talking about bioacoustic research, talking about how to interact with places like the Al Moon Lab, maybe things not to do, track casting. And then Brett and Jill are going to show up. Brett is going to do a couple different things. First of all, he's going to be showcasing some of his camera trickery and wizardry right there. You can write up what you're going to do and what you're going to show us, Brett, in the comments below, because I know you've got some new cameras that I hope you bring. I think you're going to bring, including your IR thermal gizmo. You're like Dr. Brown. And you're going to bring those and show people how to get the best footage and probably what not to do as well. And I bet you'll bring your drone. And then Jill, you're going to show up as well and tell people about yourself. What are you going to offer?
I'm gonna talk to people about how I've used. Boy, I'm like coming out here. How my journey in this world has been shaped, especially in the documentary, being intuitive and leaning on abilities to hone in on certain subjects during interviews and finding stories that probably would have been overlooked in normal situations, and just how that's played a role in the documentaries and how we've been approaching the subject.
Now, are you going to do readings
I
at
can,
all?
yeah. I can,
Okay.
yeah. It's probably the way I'm talking, I'm making it sound like I'm
Yeah.
gonna be in therapy. Like
Yeah,
I'm gonna
right.
be like, it's gonna be like on the Goonies when the Fratelli brothers are holding Chunk's hand in the
Right.
blender and he's like, ah. Yeah.
That was a deep pull. Okay. So Jill's going to offer her services here at camp as far as an intuitive. And we also have a scavenger hunt planned. We have Sasquatch cornhole. Um, these are 4 days of experiences. And so for that, the price tag was a little bit hard to come up with, but based upon everything that we're offering and the whole schedule that we're offering you, we'll have a snack shack set up. If you want to get a hoodie to wear at camp, we'll have a different ticket for people that want hoodie. But for 4 days in the woods with all of us, the schedule's online. Any questions you have, 30 tickets. That's all we have. When they're gone, they're gone. And I think that's pretty much it on my end. You can go to olympicstrangedays.com and be a part of that history. Now, wait a second. One of the big things that we're going to offer up here is a screening, and that's going to be people's first initial take to selected 30 people to look at the raw footage of Voices in the Wilderness in the frickin' wilderness. On a big screen out in the woods. Are you crazy? You want to be a part of that, right? Like, I want to be a part of that. And so that's going to be offered. Brett's going to show a premiere of sorts in the woods.
Let's call it a rough cut, a sneak peek, a preview
S-
of coming attractions. I don't
Rough
know how
cut.
much we'll have, but
I like rough
that's what
cut.
it takes to lure you out into the wilderness with us. That's what we'll do.
Yeah. So more on that later. There may be some surprises too after we break camp. And we'll get into that in the weeks and months, but olympicstrangedays.com. That's it for
Sounds
me.
sounds good. Brett and I will be on the road. Uh, we'll try to post some stuff and keep things active on the YouTube channel. We do have some exciting things planned along the way, and hopefully we will have some interviews from the road for you. And just remember, on our YouTube channel, members get early access, and there's some other videos that are for members only. So check that out. It's only $5 a month. That breaks down to like a dollar, a little over a dollar a week,
Hmm.
and it helps out. I mean, it buys us coffee. It puts a little gas in our car when we're driving out to do these interviews, and it helps us keep awake and alert behind the wheel as we're driving to location to film interviews.
Absolutely. Who picks the music out when you guys are driving? How does that go?
That's all, Brett.
Okay.
That's all, Brett. And I have to say it out loud so I don't forget it. A lot of people have been asking about the music that's featured in A Flash of Beauty Bigfoot Revealed. It is on my list to put together the playlist and
Nice.
post that, because a lot of these artists, they're available. You can download their music, so we'll get that out there, and you can create your own A Flash of Beauty experience at home.
Okay. Well, that's it. I guess we'll see the kids when we see them.
That's all I got.
All right. Drive safe. Good night, everybody.